What happens when the most photographed woman on the planet walks into a room expecting admiration, but instead walks straight into a question sharp enough to slice through her entire public image? Before we dive into the moment that left the studio gasping, make sure you subscribe to Stage View and hit like, comment, and share, because what unfolds next is the kind of confrontation television rarely dares to show. The air inside the studio was thick with anticipation long before Kim Kardashian arrived. The View was known for heated debates, awkward exchanges, and moments that spiraled far beyond daytime TV comfort. But today had a different weight to it, an electricity that hummed under the lights, something the crew felt in their bones. It wasn't just another celebrity interview. It was a collision waiting to happen. The audience murmured among themselves, scattered whispers rippling through the room like anxious waves. Some were excited, some skeptical, and some simply curious to see whether reality TV royalty could hold her own on a table known for cutting through public personas with surgical precision. The producers moved frenetically, adjusting cameras, double-checking cue cards, rehearsing transitions, trying to prevent what fate had already set into motion. Backstage, Kim stood in front of a mirror, smoothing out the flawless lines of her ivory suit. Her makeup was immaculate, sculpted to precision. Lips glazed, cheekbones carved like marble, eyes sharp and controlled. But beneath that flawless exterior, there was tension. Something in her jaw tightened every time she breathed. She'd been on dozens of talk shows, faced thousands of interviews, and endured more scrutiny than most people experience in 10 lifetimes. But something about The View was different. She knew it. Everyone did. Her publicist hovered behind her, tapping her phone nervously. "They're going to try to make it spicy," she murmured. "Just stay calm. Smile. Don't give them anything they can twist." Kim nodded slowly, but her eyes didn't leave her reflection. The stage manager approached. "Kim, they're ready for you." The instant she stepped out from backstage, the room shifted. Applause erupted, loud, enthusiastic, but tinted with curiosity. The audience rose like a wave, cheering and clapping as Kim smiled, waved, and made her way toward the table. But behind those smiles, behind the shared excitement, something else simmered, something she couldn't yet place. The co-hosts greeted her one by one. Sunny with her warm, analytic smile. Sarah with bubbly energy. Joy with her comedic edge. And then, Whoopi, sitting back in her chair, observing quietly, hands folded, expression unreadable. Kim sat between Sarah and Sunny. Cameras glided across the room, the red lights blinking alive as the director's voice echoed in the headsets. "We're live in 3, 2. The applause faded, and the tension rose like steam. Sarah began with softballs. Questions about Kim's new business venture, her philanthropic efforts, her legal studies. Kim answered gracefully, delivering polished responses with practiced ease. The audience nodded, some impressed, others indifferent but engaged enough. Everything seemed smooth, almost too smooth. Sunny followed with a more provocative angle. "Kim, you've built an empire. But do you ever feel people still underestimate you because of how your fame began?" The audience reacted, a few murmurs, a few sharp inhales. Kim maintained her composure, offering a rehearsed but heartfelt answer about reinvention, about growth, about proving herself through work. Her voice wavered just slightly, revealing a strain beneath the surface. But the real shift happened when Joy cracked a joke about influencers and famous for being famous culture. It was meant lightly, but it landed with a sting. Kim laughed politely, but her fingers tightened around her lap. Then finally silence. Heavy, expectant silence. Whoopi leaned forward slowly, and the room froze. Her voice came low, calm, but laced with something unmistakably sharp. "So Kim," she said, staring directly at her with those steady, piercing eyes, "I have to ask you this, and it's something a lot of people wonder but rarely say out loud." The audience stiffened. The co-hosts glanced sideways. Even the camera operators stopped moving. Kim blinked, preparing herself. "Okay, what do you want to ask?" Whoopi tilted her head slightly, her expression unchanging. "You've made billions, built a brand. You've influenced an entire generation. But there's a big question on people's minds. And I want to hear your honest answer, not the press-trained one." Kim exhaled softly. "I'll do my best." Whoopi continued, each word deliberate. "What do you say to people who think your entire career is built on smoke and mirrors? That everything you've achieved comes from image, not substance? That without controversy, without spectacle, you'd have nothing." A collective gasp tore through the room. Kim's smile faltered. Her eyes widened ever so slightly, not in surprise, but in the quiet recognition of an attack she'd feared would come. Her publicist, watching off stage, went rigid. But Whoopi wasn't finished. And more than that, she said, leaning even closer. Do you ever worry that you've contributed to a culture where young women feel they need to change everything about themselves just to be accepted? Do you think you've helped create impossible standards? The words hit like a hammer. Not shouted, not aggressive, just devastating in their honesty. The room fell into a deep, echoing quiet. Kim took a breath. Then another. For the first time that morning, she looked truly shaken. Her fingers trembled against her knee. I think that's a very loaded question, she began, voice barely above a whisper. I've always tried to use my platform for good. To empower people. To inspire. Empower them how? Whoopi cut in, not harshly, but directly. By showing them perfection that isn't real? By selling them an ideal they can't reach? Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Kim swallowed hard. The facade began to crack. I never asked to be a role model, she said, her voice cracking. I never claimed to be perfect. But you're aware that you became one, Whoopi pressed. Whether you wanted to or not. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Some nodded. Some whispered. Some stared in uneasy silence. Kim looked down. For a moment, she wasn't the billionaire mogul, the influencer icon, or the queen of curated perfection. She was simply a woman confronted with every critique she'd spent years trying to outrun. Do you regret it? Whoopi asked finally. Any of it? Kim lifted her head slowly. I regret that people sometimes feel bad because of something I posted. I regret that I didn't understand how powerful my influence was in the beginning. But I've changed. I've grown. And I'm trying, really trying, to be more responsible. Her voice wavered dangerously close to breaking. Whoopi's expression softened slightly, but her eyes remained locked on Kim, unflinching. That's the first real answer I've heard from you today, she said quietly. Another wave rippled through the audience. Gasps mixed with murmurs, confusion tangled with admiration. Kim breathed, shaky but honest, and for a moment the veneer fell away completely. But the moment wasn't finished. Because Joy leaned forward with an unexpected question, one that twisted the tension even further. So, Kim, she said, raising a brow, if you had to choose between the empire you've built and the public's respect, which one matters more to you? The room erupted. Gasps. Laughter. Shock. A few shouted, "Ooh," like kids on a playground witnessing a verbal slap. Kim looked caught in headlights. That's not a fair question, she whispered. Joy shrugged. Life isn't fair. Whoopi folded her hands, observing silently again. Sunny gently stepped in, trying to soften the blow. Kim, you don't have to answer that if you feel it's. No, Kim said suddenly, voice stronger. I'll answer it. The table stilled. The respect, she said. I want respect. I want to be taken seriously. Everything I've done, everything I've built, I did it to prove something. Not just to other people. To myself. Her voice cracked. This time, she didn't try to hide it. The audience didn't know how to react. Some softened, some remained skeptical, some leaned in even further, hungry for more. Whoopi nodded slightly, acknowledging the vulnerability. But you know, she said gently, respect is earned. Not marketed. Kim inhaled sharply as if the words pierced her. She didn't respond. She couldn't. The camera zoomed in on her expression, a subtle mix of pride, pain, defensiveness, and truth battling all at once. It was raw. It was unfiltered. It was something the world rarely saw from her. And it wasn't over. Sarah placed a comforting hand on Kim's arm. We'll take a quick break, she announced with a soft voice. And when we come back, we'll talk about Kim's new project. The audience applauded, some genuinely, some awkwardly. The music swelled, the lights shifted, and the screen faded to commercial. But Kim Kardashian didn't move. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. Her eyes flickered toward Whoopi, confusion and hurt swirling beneath the surface. Whoopi didn't speak. Not yet. And backstage, producers scrambled, panicked whispers flying as they tried to decide whether to steer the next segment toward safety or prepare for the rest of the explosion. The studio lights dimmed slightly as the commercial break stretched on, but the tension remained thick enough to taste. Crew members hurried across the stage, adjusting microphones and whispering into earpieces. The audience, still buzzing, leaned toward one another in hushed, excited voices, trying to decode what they had just witnessed. Kim sat frozen in her chair, her posture stiff, her eyes distant. The glam-prepped facade had cracked, but the break hadn't offered her a moment of recovery. If anything, she seemed even more unsettled now, caught between defending her image and confronting the hard truths she'd spent years avoiding. Her publicist rushed to the side of the stage, gesturing frantically. Kim, look at me, she whispered sharply. You're doing fine. Breathe. Don't let them see you rattled. Kim forced a breath, shallow and trembling. I'm not rattled, she lied. But her eyes glistened. Across the table, the hosts exchanged looks, some concerned, some contemplative, some calculating. Whoopi remained silent, her gaze steady, unreadable. She didn't fidget, didn't lean in for dramatic effect, didn't whisper to the others. She simply waited, hands folded, as though she knew the storm hadn't finished brewing. The director's voice echoed through the studio. 30 seconds. The audience settled again, though energy crackled through the air like static. A moment later, the music swelled, the lights snapped back to full brightness, and cameras glided into position. We're back, Sarah announced with a practiced smile, though her eyes flickered with concern. Kim Kardashian is here with us today, and before the break, we touched on some pretty powerful moments. A few chuckles rippled through the audience, though most stayed silent, watchful. Sarah continued. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about your new initiative. Kim, tell us what inspired this project. Kim inhaled deeply, gathering composure like shattered glass. She sat straighter, smoothing her suit jacket, her voice steadying as she spoke. This project is about advocacy, about using my platform to help people who don't have one. It's something I care about deeply. Her tone was controlled, measured, almost rehearsed, but her eyes betrayed the lingering storm beneath. Sunny responded first, her voice soft and respectful. I think the work you're doing in criminal justice reform is commendable. Truly. But I do have to ask, do you ever worry that people question your intentions? That they think you're trying to rebrand yourself rather than help others? Kim hesitated. I know people question everything I do, but I'm not doing it for approval. I'm doing it because it matters to me. Whoopi's eyes lifted slightly, noting the quiver in Kim's voice. But she didn't speak. Not yet. Joy leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. But Kim, you have to admit, your family is famous for, well, spectacle. Big moments. Drama. Headlines. How do you expect people to take your advocacy seriously when the Kardashian brand is built on, She spun her hand dramatically in a circle. Chaos. The audience laughed in a low chorus. Kim didn't. She pressed her lips together, fighting to stay composed. I can't control what people think of my family. All I can do is my own work, my own intentions. And the photo shoots, Joy added suddenly. And the product lines. And the reality show. And the scandals. Kim's breath hitched. The hostility wasn't subtle anymore. It was a slow burn tightening around her. Sarah intervened quickly. Okay, let's give Kim a moment to. No, it's fine, Kim said, holding up a hand. Her voice sharpened, gaining an edge she rarely showed on live TV. I get it. People think they know me because they've seen edited clips or headlines or moments from years ago. But none of you really know me. The co-hosts exchanged startled looks. Even the audience shifted uncomfortably. Kim continued, her voice trembling with emotion she could no longer hide. I've spent my entire adult life being judged by people who never even looked past the surface. Everyone thinks I'm just trying to be perfect all the time. But I'm not. I'm human. And I've worked really hard, harder than people realize. Her throat tightened, but she didn't stop. I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to talk about what I'm actually doing. Sunny nodded, offering a small, empathetic smile. But Whoopi remained still. And then Whoopi spoke. Her voice was calm, too calm. Kim, no one is saying you don't work hard. But people want to understand who you are behind the image. Because the image is loud. It's everywhere. And it's not always aligned with the message you're trying to send. Kim swallowed. Then what do you want me to say? Nothing rehearsed, Whoopi replied. Just honesty. Real honesty. Not brand-approved honesty. Kim blinked, stunned by the directness. I am being honest, she insisted. Are you? Whoopi asked, leaning forward. Or are you doing what you've always done, managing perception? A sharp gasp swept the room. Kim's breathing quickened. Her eyes darted between the co-hosts, then toward the audience, where hundreds of expectant eyes waited for her next word. Her chest rose and fell unevenly. Then, with a voice barely above a whisper, she said, You have no idea how hard it is to live under a microscope. Whoopi didn't look away. And you have no idea how many people feel pressured because of that microscope pointing back at them. Kim flinched at the words. The audience murmured, torn between sympathy and agreement. Kim's voice cracked. I never asked to be a role model. But you accepted the benefits that come with it, Whoopi said. The influence, the money, the power. And with that comes responsibility. Kim stared at her, hurt, defensive, but also thinking. Wrestling with herself. With the truth. With the weight she'd carried so long she forgot what it felt like not to. The silence stretched taut. Then Sunny gently intervened. I think what Whoopi is saying, Kim, is that you're in a unique position to shape culture. And some people just want assurance that you're aware of that. Kim nodded slowly, her voice softening. I am aware. Maybe I wasn't before. But I am now. Her eyes glistened again, but she held the tears back. The audience softened. A few clapped supportively. But joy wasn't finished. Kim, be honest. Do you ever feel like you've lost control of your own narrative? Like the brand is bigger than the person? Kim exhaled shakily. Yes, sometimes. More than I want to admit. She looked down at her hands, perfectly manicured, trembling slightly. I feel like no matter what I do, people will always see the version of me they decided on years ago. The room went quiet again. Heavier. More intimate. And then, unexpectedly, Whoopi's voice softened. That's the first time you've spoken like yourself today. Kim's eyes flicked up, vulnerable and searching. Isn't that what you wanted? She whispered. Whoopi nodded once. Yes. Sarah cleared her throat, shifting the mood as the producers frantically signaled from behind the camera. Kim, I think the audience would love to know, what keeps you going? With all of this? The pressure. The scrutiny. Kim blinked back the emotion and pulled herself together. My kids, she said. They're my grounding force. My reason for everything. The audience awed, the softest moment of the morning. But the softness wouldn't last. Because just then, a bold voice rang out from the audience. One that hadn't been planned, rehearsed, or authorized. Then why do you promote unrealistic beauty standards if you care so much about kids? The room exploded into gasps. Security turned their heads. Producers panicked. The co-host stiffened. Kim froze. Whoopi's eyebrows lifted slightly, but she didn't intervene. The woman stood up, unapologetic, clearly emotional. My daughter is 13, she said. And she thinks she has to look like you to be worth anything. Kim's breath caught. Joy muttered, oh boy, under her breath. Sunny looked torn between diffusing the moment and respecting the raw truth the woman had unleashed. Sarah glanced at the director, who frantically cut between camera feeds, unsure whether to air the outburst. Kim stared at the woman. Face pale, eyes wide, completely stripped of the confident persona she walked in with. I never wanted that, Kim whispered. The woman shook her head. But it happened. Security approached, but Whoopi raised a hand subtly, and they held back. The audience member continued. You're powerful, Kim, whether you like it or not. And people follow you. Girls copy you. They starve themselves trying to look like you. Don't you see that? Kim's face crumpled slightly. She fought to hold herself together. I'm trying to be better, she said shakily. I'm trying to show more authenticity now. I can't change the past. But you can take responsibility, the woman interrupted. Silence engulfed the room. It wasn't anger anymore. It was pleading. Kim swallowed hard. You're right, she whispered. I can do more. And I will. The woman stared at her, breath trembling. Then she nodded, allowed security to gently guide her down, and the room slowly steadied. But Kim was trembling. The camera zoomed in. The world was watching her unravel, not out of scandal or drama, but out of humanity. Sarah exhaled, voice shaking slightly. We're going to take another break. The screen cut to commercial. But the damage had been done. And the real fallout hadn't even begun. The moment the commercial break began, the studio atmosphere fractured into chaos. Producers swarmed the stage like bees shaken from a hive, some scrambling to regroup, others arguing under their breath about what to do next. The temperature of the room seemed to spike, not from the studio lights, but from the intensity still radiating off every corner of the space. Kim sat motionless in her chair. Her stillness was alarming, not the controlled, poised stillness of a seasoned public figure, but the numbed stillness of someone who had just been emotionally blindsided. Her chest rose and fell in shallow breaths that almost didn't rise at all. Her publicist rushed to her side. Kim, look at me. Look at me, she urged, touching Kim's arm. You're okay. You're okay. This is manageable. But Kim wasn't looking at her. She wasn't looking at anything. Her gaze drifted somewhere beyond the studio, beyond the cameras, beyond all the noise. It took several seconds before her voice finally emerged, quiet, strained, and barely forming words. She said her daughter thinks she needs to look like me. The publicist closed her eyes for a moment, softening. People project onto you, Kim. You know this. You can't carry all that weight. Kim drew a shaking breath. But I feel it. Meanwhile, at the table, the co-hosts had huddled together for a tense, whispered conversation. Joy's voice was the loudest, even when lowered. We cannot have audience members standing up yelling at the guests. I'm all for honesty, but that was real, Sunny said firmly. And whether we like it or not, people feel that way. Sarah nodded slowly, her eyes flicking worriedly toward Kim. She looked shaken, more than shaken. But Whoopi sat quietly, watching Kim with a contemplative expression, one hand pressed lightly to her chin. She wasn't smug. She wasn't satisfied. She wasn't gloating over the emotional fallout. If anything, she looked troubled, like she had pushed a door open she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to look through. The director burst toward the co-hosts. We need to decide how to handle the next segment. The network is blowing up my phone. Do we steer it back to the project or... No, Whoopi interrupted calmly. We let the conversation happen. The director blinked. Happen? Whoopi, she's on the verge of tears. And that's exactly why we need to continue, Whoopi said. Her tone wasn't cruel, it was resolute. If she walks out of here without saying what she needs to say, this will haunt her for weeks. Or years. The table fell into silence. Even the director didn't have a comeback. After a moment, Sarah sighed, rubbing her forehead. Fine, but we need to tread carefully. You do your job, Whoopi replied. I'll do mine. Backstage staff handed the co-hosts their refreshed cue cards, though everyone knew none of them would be used. The show had veered off script hours ago. The director called out, 30 seconds. The audience murmured anxiously, resettling in their seats. They were hungry now, not for spectacle, but for resolution. Something real. Something human. Kim wiped the corner of her eye with a trembling finger, inhaling a deep breath as she steeled herself. 10 seconds. Sarah glanced at Kim, gently touching her arm. Ready. Kim didn't nod, but she didn't walk away either. The lights rose. Music swelled. Cameras rolled. We're back, Sarah said, her voice measured, soft. And there's a lot to unpack. Kim shifted in her seat, lifting her chin slightly. Her eyes were glistening, but she held herself steady. Sarah continued. Before the break, an audience member raised a concern that many people have expressed over the years. And Kim, I want to give you space if you want it to respond. Kim breathed slowly, gathering courage she hadn't known she'd need today. Look, she began, voice fragile but determined. I know I've made mistakes. I know there were times when I posted things or promoted things without thinking about how it affected people, especially young girls. I'm not proud of that. The audience listened intently. No whispers. No shifting. Just silence. Kim continued. I never wanted anyone to feel like they weren't enough because of something I did. I didn't want to hurt anyone. And I'm trying to be more thoughtful now. More honest. More real. I'm trying. Her voice broke on the last word. Sunny leaned forward. That's important, Kim. And that's part of why conversations like this matter. Whoopi finally spoke, her tone measured. Kim, you've changed a lot over the years. And I think people see that. But they also see the ripple effect of what you helped create, whether you intended to or not. Kim nodded, tears glimmering at the edges of her lashes. I know. And it's scary, because I can't go back and fix the past. No, Whoopi replied softly. But you can shape the future. And you can take responsibility now. Kim stared at her, hurt, vulnerable, but listening. And I am, Kim whispered. Joy leaned in, her voice kinder this time. Can I ask something? Not as a host, but as a woman watching another woman take the heat of the whole world? Kim blinked. Okay. Joy tilted her head. Do you resent it? The pressure? The responsibility? The constant criticism? Kim exhaled shakily, and this time, her honesty cut deeper than any scripted answer could. Yes, she whispered. Sometimes I resent it so much I want to disappear. The audience gasped, some softly, some sharply. Kim continued, voice trembling. People think I love the attention. They think I live for it. But the truth is, the attention comes with so much pain. Every mistake is magnified. Every flaw is weaponized. And I've tried to be strong, to be confident, to be unbothered, but I'm not. I'm not unbothered at all. A hush fell over the room, so complete it felt like the studio had stopped breathing. Kim's throat tightened. I feel like I'm constantly being punished for being human. The vulnerability pierced everyone in the room. Even the skeptics softened. Sarah reached for Kim's hand. Kim let her take it. Sunny whispered, "That's incredibly brave to admit." But Whoopi wasn't done, though her next question didn't carry the sharpness of earlier. Instead, it felt like she was guiding Kim towards something she had been avoiding for years. "Kim," she said gently, "what do you want? Outside the brand. Outside the fame. Outside the expectations. What do you want for yourself?" Kim froze. It wasn't a question she was used to. It wasn't a question she'd prepared for. It wasn't a question she'd ever really answered honestly. Not even privately. She began, then stopped. Her breath shuddered. She closed her eyes, searching deep inside. "I want peace," she whispered. "I want to be able to live my life without feeling like every move I make will break someone's heart or ruin someone's confidence. I want to feel enough. I want my kids to see me in a way that isn't tied to how I look." The words hit the table like a confession she'd carried for decades. Whoopi nodded slowly. "That's real." The audience murmured agreement, some even wiping away tears. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, Sunny asked the question that shifted everything again. Gently, but with weight. "Kim, do you think you've ever been unfair to yourself?" Kim looked up, stunned. "What do you mean?" she asked. Sunny offered a compassionate smile. "You've let the world define you. You've let them call you shallow, or fake, or dramatic, or manufactured. But when you strip all that away, who decided you weren't enough? Them. Or you?" Kim's breath caught in her chest. A tear finally spilled over. "I don't know," she whispered. Maybe both." Sunny nodded. "Maybe it's time you stopped believing the worst about yourself." Kim's face crumpled, emotion overwhelming her. The audience erupted into applause, soft at first, then rising, swelling, surrounding Kim like a wave of unexpected comfort. But Whoopi lifted a hand, quieting the room. "Kim," she said, a gentleness settling in her tone that hadn't been there earlier. "You showed something today we don't usually see from you, or from anyone in your position. You showed humanity, and people needed to see that." Kim breathed shakily. "I didn't mean to break down." "Maybe you didn't break down," Whoopi said. "Maybe you finally broke open." The words struck deep, so deeply that Kim had to close her eyes to steady herself. The director motioned frantically, pointing to the clock. They were over time. Far over. But no one dared interrupt. Sarah finally leaned forward, voice soft and steady. "We're going to take one last break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the aftermath. The public reaction, the responsibility, and what comes next." Kim nodded, wiping her cheeks. "I'm ready," she whispered. But she didn't know, none of them knew, how explosive the next segment would become. Because outside the studio, on social media, in fan circles, in critic circles, the world was already reacting. And it was only going to get louder. The moment the show returned from its final break, something had fundamentally shifted in the studio. The air was no longer buzzing with confrontation. It was pulsing with anticipation, like the last quiet breath before a storm breaks. The audience leaned forward as one collective body, sensing they were watching not just an interview, but a moment that would echo across headlines, clips, and conversations for days, maybe weeks. Kim's posture had changed. She was still shaken, still vulnerable, but she no longer looked like she was drowning. Instead, there was a strange steadiness in her eyes, a fragile but unmistakable clarity, as though all the layers she'd carried for years had fallen away, leaving only the raw truth of who she was beneath it all. Sarah took the lead again, though her voice was softer now, lacking the TV brightness she usually carried. "Welcome back. This has been an emotional conversation for everyone. Kim, we appreciate your honesty." Kim nodded, her breathing deep but no longer trembling. She wiped her cheeks gently, careful not to smear her makeup, then placed her hands deliberately in her lap, grounding herself. Joy tapped her pen lightly against the table, an old habit whenever she was thinking. "We've talked about the past," she said. "We've talked about pressure. But I think what a lot of viewers want to know is, where do you go from here? What's next for Kim Kardashian after a moment like this?" Kim glanced down, gathering her thoughts. "I think what's next is healing," she said softly. "Healing my own relationship with myself. Healing how I show up for people who follow me. Healing the way I use my platform." The audience murmured, many nodding. Sunny leaned in. "Do you think today changed something for you?" Kim nodded slowly. Yes, absolutely. I think for the first time, I stopped trying to defend myself and actually listened. Really listened. And it made me realize maybe I've been performing strength for so long, I forgot what real strength looks like. Whoopi watched her intently, her expression unreadable, but there was something gentler in her eyes now. A softening. And what does real strength look like to you? Whoopi asked quietly. Kim hesitated only for a moment before answering. Not pretending I'm perfect. Not pretending I'm invincible. Real strength is admitting I've made mistakes and choosing to grow from them. Real strength is allowing myself to be vulnerable, not because it looks good on camera, but because it's the truth. The audience exhaled as a collective, some with emotional sighs, some with quiet applause. But then Whoopi asked the question everyone was waiting for. One more challenge, but this time wrapped not in confrontation, but in care. Kim, do you feel like you owe your audience something after today? An apology? A commitment? A promise? Kim's eyes glistened again, not with fear this time, but with resolve. I think I owe them honesty, she said. And I owe them better. I can't change everything overnight, but I can be more intentional, more transparent, more responsible about the things I share. Not because people demand it, but because it's the right thing to do. The audience erupted into applause, this time louder, fuller, and without hesitation. Her vulnerability had become her power. But the moment wasn't over. Because just as the applause softened, Joy leaned forward with her final question, unexpectedly sincere. Kim, do you forgive yourself? Kim inhaled sharply. The question hit her harder than any criticism, any accusation, any viral comment ever could. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her throat constricted. Her eyes filled. And then finally, with a small, broken voice, she whispered, I'm trying. The audience fell dead silent. I'm really trying, she repeated, her voice cracking open completely. And maybe that's enough for now. Sarah reached out, taking Kim's hand again, squeezing it gently. Sunny wiped the corner of her eye. Even Joy let out a small, emotional sniff. But Whoopi simply nodded once, deeply solemnly. That's all any of us can do, she said. The director motioned wildly. 3 minutes left, wrap it up, hit the outro. But none of the co-hosts moved to end the moment prematurely. Sarah finally took a breath. Kim, thank you for sharing so openly today. This conversation wasn't easy. For any of us. But it was important. Kim managed a small smile, exhausted, emotional, but real. Thank you for letting me. Sunny added, sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is tell the truth. Joy shrugged. And sometimes it's letting the truth smack us across the face a little. The audience laughed lightly, breaking the tension. And then all eyes turned to Whoopi for the final thought. Because whether people agreed with her or not, she was the anchor of this entire collision. Whoopi leaned forward, her hands folded, her tone calm and resolute. Kim, she said, the world has a lot to say about you. Good, bad, everything in between. But today you said something to the world. Something real. And whether people agree or not, they can't deny one thing. Today you showed up. Kim blinked, absorbing every word. You showed up as a person, Whoopi continued. Not a brand. Not an image. Not a headline. She paused, letting the silence carry weight. And I respect that. Kim's breath quivered as she whispered, thank you. The audience applauded, this time rising to their feet. A full standing ovation. Kim covered her mouth with her hand, overwhelmed, whispering, oh my God, under her breath. The camera panned across the room. Faces emotional, respectful, thoughtful. This wasn't the reaction anyone expected walking into the show that morning. But that's what made it unforgettable. The outro music began softly under the applause. Sarah lifted her voice over the cheers. Thank you for joining us today. This has been one of the most powerful episodes we've had in a long time. We'll see you next time on The View. The lights dimmed slightly. The applause lingered. The show ended. But the moment was only beginning. The studio buzzed with aftershocks. Producers whispered, hosts exhaled, crew members talked among themselves. People tried to make sense of what they had just witnessed. An interview that wasn't an interview, a confrontation that wasn't a takedown, but a deeply human unraveling and rebuilding in real time. Kim stood slowly from her chair, trembling legs steadying under her. Sarah hugged her first. Then Sunny. Then Joy, with surprising sincerity. And finally, Kim turned to Whoopi. For a moment, they simply stood with inches between them. Two women from two different worlds, two different eras, two different battles. Then Kim whispered, "Thank you for pushing me." Whoopi gave a small, knowing smile. "Thank you for not running from it." Kim exhaled, deep, relieved, emotional. As she walked off the stage, cameras flashed. Producers followed. Assistants hovered. The world outside the studio was waiting, and it wasted no time reacting. Within minutes, hashtags exploded across social media. Hashtag Kim on the View. Hashtag Whoopi versus Kim. Hashtag Kim breaks down. Hashtag Real Kim K. Hashtag The View Unfiltered. Clips circulated faster than the producers could even approve them. Commentators weighed in. Fans debated. Critics analyzed. Influencers posted reactions. TikTok filled with edits, breakdowns, emotional response videos, and heated discussions. Some praised Kim's vulnerability. Some criticized her. Some defended her. Some called it a turning point. Some called it a reckoning. News outlets blasted headlines. Kim Kardashian gets emotional on The View. Whoopi Goldberg confronts Kim with unfiltered truth. Audience member challenges Kim on beauty standards. A rare moment of honesty from reality TV's biggest star. The world was on fire with conversation. But for Kim, none of that mattered as much as the quiet moment she experienced alone in her dressing room afterward. Staring at her reflection, mascara slightly smudged, eyes swollen, makeup imperfect for the first time in a long time. She didn't flinch. She didn't fix it. She simply stared and whispered, "It's okay." For the first time, she didn't look away. And now, before we wrap up this story, what do you think? Was Kim's reaction genuine? Did Whoopi go too far? Or was this the conversation the world needed to witness? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And if you want more explosive, dramatic, cinematic stories like this one, deep dives into shocking moments, celebrity confrontations, and the truth behind the stage, make sure you subscribe to Stage View. Hit the like button, drop a comment, and share this video. More stories are coming, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's next.